Welcome to our webinar on student visa requirements globally. This webinar is brought to you exclusively by the Chopras, one of India's largest and most successful global education companies. Our student visa webinar today will cover a number of key areas, including eligibility for a student visa, the documentation required, funding issues, post-study visas, as well as a range of other useful information. The webinar will also help you understand how the Chopras can help you with your student visa application. Our keynote speaker this afternoon is Mrs. Natasha Chopra, Managing Director of The Chopras. Mrs. Chopra was educated in the United Kingdom and has lived and worked most of her life overseas. As Managing Director of The Chopras, one of India's largest and most successful global education companies, Mrs. Chopra has dedicated the past 20 years of her life to shaping the lives and careers of students seeking global education opportunities. The structure of the webinar today will be in the format of a presentation. Questions will be taken throughout the webinar, so please do take the opportunity to post these via the chat facility as we go along. We will attempt to answer as many of the questions that come in as possible, but guarantee that any unanswered questions today will get a response by email in the coming few days. We hope you enjoy today's webinar, and I will now hand over to Mrs. Chopra to officially begin today's event.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, we hope to have an interesting session for the next hour or so on visas. Now, this is one four-letter word which causes a lot of tension to every student who walks in. But you know, really speaking, there's no need to have that tension. It's all a question of planning and planning well in advance. Why are people tense about visas? Am I going to get them? Am I not? Do I have the right documents? And the questions go on. And of course, the weight can be quite huge from the embassies and the high commissions. Let's just step back a little bit and see why you're applying, where you're applying. In fact, that is the key. Whichever country you're thinking of, you should be looking at it in terms of what is it that you want to achieve, what are your aspirations, and what are the outcomes that you're looking for. If those things can be crystallized in your mind and with the help of our counselors, it'll be a very, very strong step in ensuring that you have success in being able to be granted your visa. You know, a little example is that, for example, I mean, you know, a simple example, if you really are looking to perhaps find a country where you can go build up your skills, study, and then perhaps join the workforce, then there are some options that you will look at and not the others. Remember, every country right now is looking for the talent pool. And there was a research done by the Manpower Talent Pool company. And what they've identified is that there is a 35% shortage globally of talented people. So there is a huge talent gap between what there is and what the requirements are for employers. For those of you who want to go into who want to become professionals and find jobs, it's very important that you look at what the requirements for this talent are. And they vary so much. They can be anything from skilled workers to electricians. It can be in engineering. It's in public health. It's in medical areas. It's in areas like radiography. There is a huge demand for people across the world. In fact, let's not forget the accountants and the managers as well. So be conscious of these, because you should be planning your life in a way that you're able to be part of this talent pool that is required. It doesn't matter where you want to go in the world. And the other thing is, for those of you who are looking just for a good quality education and then be able to come back, there is again a huge number of countries. So the eligibility for a student visa is really your intent. Every institution and every university and every high commission, the first thing they want to be able to assess, and they will assess, is what is your intention. Your intentions need to be genuine, that you really want to study. If you're applying for a student visa, then the visa has to be for you to study and not a backdoor entry of being able to get into a country and then trying to flit off. I think those days are far gone. You know that everything is monitored. Many countries have very, very sophisticated systems to be able to see what's happening, and why take a chance on doing something which is not legal. So if your intent is to study, then we really need to then find out what it is that you're interested in and the outcomes that you're looking for. These are all questions and answers that we can help you with. The key thing that I would like to mention here also is that be honest with yourself and be honest with the counselor that you're working with. It's only if you're honest that we can give you the best advice possible. So once we know that what your intentions are, or what your aspirations and outcomes are, we can then guide you and help you make the right kind of applications to the right countries and the right universities. So every student needs to have an unconditional offer letter, and that's quite feasible. It's not difficult at all, providing you do everything, doing all the paperwork correctly. And then, of course, you have to have the funding to be able to cover your tuition fees as well as your living expenses. Now, there are, of course, many funding options, but I'm not going to go into detail of those at the moment. But suffice to say that, yes, scholarships are available, but you need to plan for them well in advance. There are, not only from the university, but there are many government scholarships as well, and there are private companies too. And at times there are scholarships available from the host country that you are going to be visiting. No, sorry, not visiting, but studying in. So there are a huge number of options, and if you want to explore all those, you need to start your planning, say, a year in advance. And for those of you who are thinking of the US, in fact, it should be even 18 months or 2 years in advance, because you need to do the test prep programs, you know, the GRE, the GMAT, the SAT, and you want to be able to give yourself an opportunity to redo them as well, should something go wrong. So your intention of what it is that you want to do, and it should be genuine. In fact, it's called, Australia gives it a very nice term. It's called GTE, which is a genuine temporary entrant. And again, most countries would want to see you as genuine and temporary. And it's only once you get to the country that if you're eligible that you may become permanent, possibly. But that's something to be seen later. So this is something that, in fact, while Australia has coined the term, every country is basically, that's what they're looking for. Now, how do we assess which countries to go for? So all the countries, if they're looking for, I mean, it's very easy to assess. If a country needs to bring people in for migration, they will offer PR and so on. If they're not interested, then they will be limiting that. Let's move on to the documentation and other requirements. Well, first of all, once you've got your offer letter, you've got your funding sorted out, there are a few things that you do need to watch out for. The visa application forms and fees, of course, are a fairly obvious one, but still an important factor to remember. You must have a valid passport that's valid for at least a minimum of 6 months before you're filing a visa. Because remember, they're going to be giving you a visa, hopefully, for at least a year or so. You don't want to be going in for a passport that is less and then going to the hassle of changing passports. Another thing that a lot of students sometimes go wrong on and can cause a lot of frustration, while it's a very simple aspect, is the photograph. Each country has a specific requirement for the photograph. This is available on the net, but please don't overlook this and just go to a photographer and say, take my picture for the passport and for the visa application, that's not correct. You need to look at that detail from the net, or when you come into our offices, we can give you all that detail and give you the exact specifications. Medicals, they are required for some countries. In fact, a lot of countries do want to know that you're not carrying any diseases or are going to be unwell and putting a strain on their country. So again, it's a good idea to check. There is also something called a PCC, or a police clearance certificate. And this is in fact required for two countries. One is Ireland and the other one is New Zealand. Every country wants law-abiding citizens, so do make sure that you don't have a criminal record of any kind. And if there was one by mistake, you do need to declare it. Health insurance, again, is mandatory for the European countries. In some countries, like Australia, which is called the OSHC, it's part of your tuition fees and you do have to pay for it. In the UK, once you go on a program which is more than 6 months, you are covered by the NHS. And in Ireland, for example, you have to buy it from one particular company. So again, all these things need to be checked. Now, in order for you to apply for the visa, you obviously have to have the unconditional offer. And a lot of countries will require for you to make some kind of deposit before you can get the unconditional visa offer letter. And for example, in the US it's called the I-20, although you don't always have to pay. In the UK it's called the CAS letter, and in Australia it's called the ECOE. Now, the other question that everybody always wants to know is that, do I need originals, or am I okay with notarized? It's very important that all your documents are genuine, because if they're not genuine, you can have serious problems. And I want to give a warning to everybody here that if you are, and the chances are you will be found out, if your documents are not genuine, you can be banned for up to 10 years by a lot of high commissions. Now, while you're being banned from that particular country, really speaking, you're ruining your visa history, because another country, if you want to apply to them, will find out, and they will want to know, and they know that this is the reason. They can in fact also bar you coming to that country. So it's very important that you are honest. Your documents are original, and they are genuine. You do not want to take any chance, any risk whatsoever with the fake documents. Now, coming back to for the visa, yes, there are some countries that require the notarized documents, and they're okay with those. And there are others that will require the original to be filed with the visa application. The UK, for example, wants the originals with the visa application. And in the US and a lot of other countries, you will take the originals with you for them to verify at the time of the interview. So now let's come to the funding. This is another one that causes a lot of headaches for a lot of people. Remember when I said to you that you really need to start your planning way in advance? It's a very simple reason. Each country has a different requirement for the funding, and they will want funds for different lengths of time. Some countries, like Australia, want to see funds in the correct format 6 months in advance. Other countries want only 3 months in advance, and we have others for 28 days. And so therefore, most countries do not want recent funds. That means that you cannot have a situation where you borrow from someone at some interest rate, put it there, and try and get a visa. That is not considered a genuine intent of study. It, in fact, bars you. So be very careful on those things, and these are the things that we can guide you with, that your funds must be genuine, there must be bank loans. And the bank loans, of course, require some kind of security. So that's between you and the bank. Now, there's a declaration required from the sponsors, which could be your parents, but each country also varies for sponsorships. Some will be fine with the close relatives, others will not. So you don't want to get it wrong, and you want to make sure that you have the right advice to make sure that your sponsorships are correct. The bank statements, they must be original and must be proven. If, for example, this is where sometimes errors are made. Let's say your father is sponsoring you, and you have, the statements are in his name. They have to show a relationship with you. Now, we have found at times, now while the passport normally does state it, there's sometimes a difference in the names, but they also want to see the birth certificate. And if the birth certificate at times does not have the child's name, this can still cause a problem. So that's where the consistency of information flow has to be absolutely spot on. And this is where students who sometimes do not take advice make mistakes. Now, the bank statements need to be there. As I said earlier, that the requirement is, for example, Australia is 6 months, UK is only 28 days, but they all vary. And each time you have to ensure that you're able to explain how the money was there and where it came from, and your spending habits are all, in fact, a very important part of the financial history that you're putting through. So on the education loans, they have to be unconditional. It has to be an unconditional sanction letter. And many of the countries will want that the first semester fees is paid from the education loan itself. There are times when students take the loans and then don't want to pay from it. Please don't make that mistake. If that's what the country requires, then that's what you need to do. There are some countries will accept other kinds of funding, mutual funds or PF and so on, but there are others who will not. So don't rely on these necessarily, because you may or may not be able to use them depending on the country that you've applied to. Now, for other documents, English proficiency, you know, there are times when, sorry, one moment. I can't see them here, show me. There are times when we, as an organization, do ask the students to take the proficiency tests. Now, even while sometimes the universities may not ask, we believe it's very important from the visa perspective to do these tests. Now, remember, a lot of countries will have interviews, and it's important that you're able to demonstrate a level of confidence that is able to answer questions and your intention accurately and let me just look at this. Now, I've got a question here. In fact, I haven't covered rejections, but the question here is health insurance needed in USA? While it is not mandatory, our advice is that you do take health insurance, because insurance in medical costs in the US are very, very expensive, and you would be very silly not to take health insurance. So please, please do that. Well, Abdul, I don't know what your question is. Okay, your question is about eligibility for a student visa. I have now covered that. If, however, you have a specific question, please do let me know. Now, can I take admission in a U.S. university with just an IELTS exam? Unlikely. I think you have to have the right qualifications, and of course the eligibility depending on what the university is looking for. What the question is. Let me look at the next question. Sorry, I'm not able to read the question here. Okay, I will be traveling to Australia with my wife. I have funds partly in my name and partly in my wife's name. Is it fine, or I need to have all the funds in my name? Well, really speaking, your wife and you are together. As long as you have a marriage certificate, then you should be fine with that. I've covered that. Now, I've got a question here about, do I need income tax returns to file my visa? Well, most countries require income tax returns for 2 to 3 years to show the ability to fund the student. The UK, however, doesn't require it, but ideally speaking, you should have your tax returns. Now, there's a question on the medical insurance, although I've covered it. But as I said, I'm sorry, I think I didn't say this correctly perhaps. For the US, the medical insurance is part of the fees. And in other countries, Ireland, the medical insurance can only be gotten from the Odris Colonial Insurance. And the others we've covered. In New Zealand also, it's a part of the fees. Now, in other documents, the thing that if you've been working, then your work experience letters must be there, and if there are any gaps in your education, you need to be able to explain them in your SOP, your statement of purpose. Please make sure that your work experience letters are genuine. What is not acceptable to a university or to the High Commission or to the Chopras is for you to say, well, I have an uncle who has a company and he can give me a work experience letter. That is not being genuine. If you were not doing anything, you must have been doing something. And maybe you were sitting for some exams, maybe you were preparing for something. It's fine to be able to say that. There's nothing wrong in being able to explain those things in that respect as long as it's the truth and genuine. The chances are that if you're going to create a false work experience, even to get admission, say, for an MBA course, you will be found out. Why take a chance? I have a simple advice on this, is that never do anything where you are looking over your shoulder, because if you've told a lie, you're always going to have a guilt conscience. There's no point in doing it, and there's no need to. Now, if you're taking a spouse, a marriage certificate is a must, and their details, and of course your funding can be in separate names as we've just seen. Sometimes students do have visas, and they can, in most cases, reapply. There's always a possibility of human error on the part of a visa officer, or maybe the assessment was not done correctly, so we can reapply. However, if you now want to decide to go to another country, you do need to explain the visa rather than trying to hide your passport. Be open, be clear, be honest. That is what we would always say, and you improve your chances of getting a visa. Now, we've talked about the huge talent pool that is required, and there are many countries which are offering students the option of staying back to be able to find work. Ireland, for example, is 1 year. And if you are able to find a job in that year, you can then stay on for 2 years and perhaps later on apply for a green card. Germany recognizes as a huge demand for skilled people, and they are in fact absorbing the workforce. Again, huge shortages. It's a thriving economy, but huge shortages in all areas, whether it's accountancy, whether it's engineers, and they want the best of the best, which is why their entry requirements for applications to universities is very, very high. Sweden is another country. While they've been saying it's for 6 months, in fact they are moving it very strongly to ensure that it's 1 year, and so those changes have been made, and they're also offering special privileges to students who've done PhD for them to be able to stay back. So there are a lot of possibilities for post-study visas in a lot of countries. Canada also, if you do a 1 year program, you can stay back 1 year. If you stay back if you study for 2 years, you can stay back 2 to 3 years. What do you need? Well, you need to have the full information on which country is best suited for you, and we can help you with that. But you need to have your degree completed, and this is where it's important that you get a good degree and really focus on your education and with all the mark sheets. Now, some countries will require you to have a job offer, but not all of them. And you do need to have a local bank account where you can show your funding. So let's take some questions after this slide. The question is, my student visa to Canada got rejected. What are the chances of getting this visa again? Well, Vignesh, I don't know the reason why your visa was rejected. However, you can reapply as long as it wasn't for fraud documentation. In fact, I have with me 2 of our visa experts as well, and they will be answering some of the questions with me as we go along. Now, the next question is, can we show FD as a form of funding for a few semesters and the first semester liquid funds? That's a little confusing the way it's been put. I'm going to pass this question on to one of our visa experts.
Yes, hello? Hello?
Okay, never mind. I think I'm having a problem with the communication there. Yes, of course, you can use FD as a form of funding.
स्टूडेंट की आवाज नहीं सुनाई दी क्या?
Can I work in US? Can I work in US, also UK, neighboring countries if I do my master's from UK? Well, we've been talking about the talent shortages. If you are in the area of the talent pool that is required, yes, there is a possibility. But these are very specific questions, and now while we're not migration consultants. You may be, it may be good to get some migration advice as well. Next question is, where do we get to know about scholarships? That's a very simple answer. Rushni, come and talk to us. Okay, I have a question which has been directed to me. I've already applied to the UK for law school. And I'm awaiting the results. I haven't given the IELTS so far. Is it fine if I give it now after applying and before a potential visa interview? Well, really speaking, for law, I would have thought that you would have done the IELTS anyway. So are you talking about that you've applied for the visa? If you've already applied, then you now may as well wait for the response. But really speaking, you should have given the IELTS. Here's a question saying, I am in second year right now pursuing BBA. Is it advisable to take a transfer to US? And what's the possibility of getting through a decent college without SAT scores, but high college GPAs and board marks? Well, Nehal, there is a possibility because we have some institutions which provide pathway programs as well. I think you need to come in and meet one of our counselors. Okay, it says I have 5.5 in IELTS and 276 in GRE. Is this going to give me any problems at visa? Rajmuli, it depends on the course that you're applying for. But and I don't know which country you're applying to, but really speaking, to enable you to be able to do well in the course, you should have a minimum of 6. And but you're looking at GRE as well. So I would try and improve your English. Otherwise, you'd have a harder time getting a good score. Let's go on to the next slide and we'll take some questions again. So I've given you some information. We've been answering some questions. So how can the Chopras assist you in shaping your life and career? Well, we started off with us saying that you need to come in to work out the right career choices first of all. It's only when you've worked out the career choices that we can then move on to giving you the right advice of which country and which universities would best suit your profile. And it's important that you are upfront about your aspirations and the outcomes that you're looking for. Now, many people do go and apply on their own. We find that a lot of them do apply, get their visas rejected, and come right back. So really speaking, why not come and do this correctly in the first time? So how do we help you? Well, we have 20 years of experience, and what we do is we help you collate the documents that you need. We are aware of what the High Commission requirements are. We will also verify all the documents that can be verified to make sure that there is no inconsistency in them and that they're in the correct format. Now, remember that every High Commission has hundreds and thousands of applications that they have to see. What is it that differentiates one file from another? One of the key things that does differentiate is the presentation of the file and how well the documentation is given. We need to make sure that your application and your visa file are error-free. And this is where our team of experts are there. They will scrutinize each and every file that is everything consistent. And things can be missed out. For example, your date of birth may be one in your mark sheet, but quite another in your birth certificate or in your passport. You may have a place of birth in your passport, but it's not the same as your birth certificate. All these are things that we will verify and ensure, and there are so many mistakes that are being made when students apply directly because you don't have the experience. We do, so that gives you a reason to come to us. Now, another aspect is that most countries will require you to have an interview. The UK, US, Australia many times can have a telephonic interview, as well as New Zealand. Canada maybe not as much, but because they want an Ireland, of course, also. So it's very important that the person that they speak to, they are confident, is speaking with confidence, is speaking honestly, and is being forthright. And these are things that we would help you with to make sure that you are coming across in that fashion. Now, I've already mentioned that the Chopras was set up in 1995, and we have a great deal of experience. We have a large team. We have a visa department in every branch and at the corporate office. So there's a lot of diligence that is paid to the visa section. And our experience in diligence translates into a very high visa success rate, hence the reputation that we have, which is, well, I'm sure you all know the reputation that we have, which is really enviable by a lot of other people. And you should also know that we always keep the student interest first. So it doesn't matter, it's not about our interest. For us, it is your interest. And that is the most important aspect, and that is what gives us the goodwill that we have. So on that note, let me take a few more questions. The question is it like our chance of getting visa to USA comparably less if we have families there? No, I don't think that's the case. In fact, as you know, the US has a very large Indian population. A lot of students are going there. Be honest, there's no need to hide. In fact, this is something that students sometimes ask, that should I tell them that I have family there? Not at all. And it's better to be honest about it, give the information, and if they are there, so be it. In fact, the High Commissions also recognize that some family support is also required. A lot of this depends on your profile, and if you're seen as a student with genuine intent, which you are, then there should be no problem at all. My tourist visa to the US was put under administrative processing once. I was granted the visa but much later. Do I still need to declare that as a visa rejection? Unless you had a visa rejection, it was not a visa rejection. It was an admin process. So I don't, if I've understood this question correctly, no, that is not the case. It says, as you've explained, the Australian High Commission requires 6 months bank statement. Does it mean that I need at least 6 months mature funds? What I mean is that you need, for Australia, you need 3 months. Sorry, the answer is 3 months mature funds. I hope that answers your question. Which country is preferable for taking masters in structural engineering, US or Australia? Well, for structural engineering, there's a huge demand in Australia, maybe in the US as well, but I certainly know about Australia. And if you can get onto a program there, please do look at it. I'm just trying to come to the next question. Sorry. Okay, the question here is, if I have done 1 degree abroad, can I get visa to do another? Absolutely, you can, but you need to be careful on a few points. Most countries will encourage you to go and do another degree there. There is a restriction that the UK has, and some countries may have, that normally degrees should be progressive, not at the same level. And the UK has one restriction, which is that you cannot stay to do a level 6 program for more than 5 years. So if you, for example, have done a 3-year bachelor's program, like a lot of students who have done, then want to go and study law for another 3 years, that's not possible. But otherwise, as long as you're progressing, yes, you can. This is another one about the visa rejection. I think we've covered the visa rejection. Can my spouse and children apply for a visa when I am studying? Yes, they are both eligible for a dependent visa in most countries, but not all countries allow a dependent to work. For example, in the USA, a dependent cannot work. And also there are some countries like, Dubai and Malaysia and Thailand that may not allow the dependent visa. So you do need to come in and ask for some and get some information. We put a slide up which gives you the fees for each of the countries. So that is there, and of course the format that this is taken in, whether it's paper or online. Let me now go back to the questions. The question here is, do I need to submit my original passport with my visa file? Well, all countries require the original passport as part of the visa file except for Australia, Singapore, Malaysia and Dubai. And in these cases, the visa is approved and intimated to the student by email. And you then take that with you. I'd also recommend that you take a picture of it so that it's always part of your records. Kindly tell me about Australia post-study visa as well. Well, you have to do a 2-year program in Australia in some of the areas that are in high demand. Always be conscious of the high demand areas, and then it's easier to get jobs in those areas. As I said to you earlier, things like engineering, IT, bioinformatics, public health, and medicine are all areas which are in high demand. Have a look at those, and you should be able to apply. Okay. Jerry, we have a question which says, is it necessary to have a job offer?
No, you have to complete your degree and your mark sheet is required, and sufficient fund you have to maintain in your bank account as well. And then the complete process of post-study visa. So once those funds, anyways you will get that.
Okay, here's another question. I wish to switch to law with human rights after the foundation year. Do you think I need to apply for Tier 4 again after the foundation, even if I have got an integrated program? Well, I'm not quite clear on your question here, Solomon, because foundation is generally at the undergraduate level, and human rights is normally at the postgraduate level. Okay, so you can go, but you can go for the BA Human Rights with the foundation, if that's what you are talking about. So, okay, you've done an integrated program already. We need to know how many years you've done the integrated program for. Because what a High Commission will not want to see is you going back 3 or 4 years, because then that would be questionable. That's it. Let me finish it. Well, thank you everyone for listening to the visa webinar. I hope I answered a lot of questions and you found it useful. Until the next time.
Thank you for joining today's webinar. We hope that you found it useful. Thanks particularly to those who contributed with their questions. This helps make the webinar more interactive and is also a very important part of the learning process. We're conscious that some of you may not have received answers to your questions this afternoon. Please rest assured, however, that you will get a response by email. Today's event is part of the Chopra's 2014 series of webinars. Several more webinars will take place over the coming months with a variety of interesting topics by experts in their respective fields, and we would encourage all of you to again join in and listen. All of our webinars will be advertised on our website, www.thechopras.com. Please keep checking for further details. Thanks to you all once again. We look forward to connecting with you again soon.